We have been scammed.
Part of a scam.
We have been part of a scam.
Today we want to talk to you about 3 situations. One of them includes us.
Moving abroad, retiring abroad, only to find when you arrive that you don't have a place to stay. So stay tuned to the end of this video for something shocking that happened to us.
Welcome to Track Us Down. If you're just finding us, I'm Monique.
And I'm Doug. Our channel is all about downshifting to an early retirement, living a healthy lifestyle, and enjoying all the freedom that comes with it.
If you find value in our videos and you enjoy them, please consider subscribing to our channel. It really helps our little channel grow and show our videos to other people who may be interested in moving abroad and having a better second half of life. The first situation we want to talk about is something that happened to us right when we arrived here. We rented an apartment for a year and it was great, all was well, but when we went for walks, we would still see that apartment available for rent, and I think it was also available for sale as well.
You know, even though, and it looked like the ad had been up for a year or longer, even though we had been living in this place for 6 months.
Right, so I'm not sure if that was to like lure people in to eventually put them in different apartments, or if they were still going to try and, I don't know how, rent out the apartment again.
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on the agency or the person who's showing that for rent. It's different if it's part of a big firm or even a small rental firm as opposed to Facebook.
And there's so many platforms. Doug mentioned Facebook. We looked a lot on Idealista, and there's some other Portuguese platforms that people look at for rentals.
Booking.com.
Booking.com, all sorts of places. And you do have to be careful there. You will see the same place listed by multiple agents, and that's very common here. People don't go with just one agent to list. Sometimes they go with multiple, so you'll see that. And that's not necessarily a scam, but we did look into a few places that we thought looked really good or the price was really good, and got back sort of from an individual rather than a company, and eventually that listing was pulled off Idealista and we got notified that it wasn't a real listing.
Yeah, when I started talking to the person on Idealista saying, hey, we're interested in renting this or buying it, all of a sudden, within maybe a day, I got a message from Idealista saying that this ad is a scam. So at least they're on top of it in that sense. The next scam that is happening here, and I'm sure it's happening anywhere where landlords rent out properties. We have friends here on Madeira, local Portuguese friends, who have units for rent. And they had one situation recently where they had a lady from Lisbon who came in and she rented their apartment. She was paying for the first few months, and then all of a sudden she stopped paying. They went to her to say, you know, what's the problem? Is there something that we can help with? So it was during COVID, so there was some rules around that as far as who you can evict out if they're not paying, which is fine. But that ended. The months went on, the year went on, and she still wasn't paying. And basically when they went to see her, she said, too bad, you can take me to court, I'm not moving out, and I'm gonna continue to live here. Well, they looked into her deeper and they found that even back on the mainland, she would rent a place because she knew the system, and she would rent a place and she would stay there for the first year and then stop paying. And then by the time it goes through the Portuguese court, 2 years, 3 years, and she was evicted, well then she would move out. But she's lived somewhere rent-free for the last 2 years, and then she did it here.
And our friends who are the landlords in this case, they actually do need that money, that rental income. That is part of what they are counting on to live. So it's very frustrating for the landlords as well. And so many of you have reached out, and whether you're buying a property for yourself or maybe you're thinking of buying a property to rent out, it's just something to take into consideration.
Right, because if you're renting it out, I mean, that would be just terrible. If that is part of your income or the main source of your retirement income, and it's on hold for the next 2 to 3 years while it goes through the Portuguese court system because somebody knows the system and is refusing to pay.
Yeah, very frustrating.
So we're happy to be here to help you and others who are interested and serious about retiring abroad, moving abroad, places like Portugal, places like Madeira. If you'd like to speak further with us, either in person here on Madeira or online, please consider joining us on Patreon. We are getting a lot of requests for information to meet up online, to meet up in person, and we're starting to get overwhelmed. So I think Patreon is a great place for us to narrow in on the people who really are looking for some extra information and some personal one-on-one information.
And the worst part is the part where we're part of a... Sorry.
It's a lot of moving parts.
The last thing we wanted to share was that we are currently part of a scam going on. Of course, we are totally unwilling participants in this, but somehow we have gotten wrapped up in this. So a friend of ours here sent me a text and said, hey, I found this really great place. It looks an awful lot like yours, not renovated like yours, but I think it's right near you. How would you like to be neighbors? And I was really excited because I thought that would be really fun if we had friends for neighbors. So she sent me the photos and some of the information, and Doug and I took a close look at it and we're like, that's our place. That's not a place near us. That is actually our place. So we sent it back to her and said, I don't think this is for real. The cost was 540 euros a month, which would be really inexpensive for a 2-bedroom where we are located. But so obviously someone's looking at that going, wow, what a great deal. And so we sent it back and said, take this a little further, see what this guy says. And he did communicate with her via text message, and she was forwarding them to us. And he had a whole backstory, didn't he?
This is the home that I raised my kids in. It has such great meaning for us. We're living in Spain right now. I wish we could be there, but we're going to rent it out. He just seemed like the most genuine person with a picture of him overlooking the ocean.
Yeah, and I thought, when we talk about this to people, we should show that picture. And then Doug says, well, I'm pretty sure that's probably not him. It's some random guy he probably put on there.
Yeah, you don't want to be showing that picture of the person. It's probably not even, obviously it's not even real. It's not a real ad.
It's not his name or anything.
Right.
Yeah.
So he said, if you only send first month's rent, last month's rent, and security deposit, you can rent it, but hurry up because they're booking fast.
And the other thing that he said is that unfortunately he couldn't be here to show the property, so it would have to kind of go just by pictures, sight unseen. So obviously our friend didn't fall for this. Unfortunately, we've had a lot of people come knocking at our door.
We've had at least 5 or 6 people.
Yeah.
We had people before we went to Lisbon. We had people while we were away on holidays in Lisbon, and our neighbors were texting us saying, hey, there's people here, something about rental. And they were upset when they found out that it wasn't for rent, and they thought the neighbors were just being rude and not renting to them. Yeah. But in any event, we had people show up who said, hey, there's we want to rent the place. We're interested. When can we move in? And we said, well, I don't know what you're talking about. So other people have found the ads, and they've been on booking.com, it's been on Facebook, and people are showing up. Some have done their due diligence, and thankfully so. That one lady who came with her husband.
Yeah, she was really sweet. Her and her husband were driving by, and I guess they had planned that they were going to send money to this guy, and they were going to get this place. But she thought, since we're in the area, let's just take a peek and maybe not ring the doorbell and knock and see what the situation is. And she was so glad to have talked to us because we said, absolutely do not send money. This place actually is not for rent. And she said, she's going to go back to the car because her husband said, don't bother, let's just do it. So she was pretty happy that she stopped, which was a smart thing to do. But others were not so lucky.
No, we had one young woman in her 20s show up about 9 o'clock one evening. She was very upset. She had sent all the money. She was supposed to move in the next day with her boyfriend, but all of a sudden nobody was responding to her email, nobody was responding to her phone call, and we just felt so bad for her because she actually was excited, so she sent the money, and now she was on her way to the police.
Can you imagine sending 1,500 euros and there's nothing there for you? There's no apartment for rent. You've literally been scammed. And we felt horrible because in some way I know it's not our fault, but we are part of it because it is our place that's listed on there. And it's very hard.
And we've done what we can. We've contacted Facebook, we've contacted booking.com, but at the end of the day, that money's gone. Yeah. The person is in some far off country and the money's already in their account. There's nothing you can do. So it's really too bad.
And these are just cautionary tales. And again, they're not Portugal or Madeira specific. I think this can happen anywhere, but as you move out into the world and you're looking at places from afar, these things can happen. So we thought we would share them with you. So the other situation we wanted to share with you that actually worked out for us is when we booked our initial stay here on booking.com.
All this ties into when we first moved to Madeira last October of 2021. For our D7, we needed a rental. We had booked a 2-week rental, and we showed up with all our belongings, big suitcases, a massive crate with a big dog, a guitar. It was super hot. We got out of the taxi. There's lots of people around. We were at Fort Madeira, where the tower was where we were staying. We moved all our stuff to the front door, and then started messaging the person to come and see us in and get us settled. And it all worked out. It was a legitimate company. We hadn't paid anything ahead of time, which I think is the key. But it just makes me think, because scams do exist on Booking.com and other platforms like Idealista.
Can you imagine?
Or Facebook. Had we got no answer, had we sent all the money, and you know, it's one thing to be out of the money, even if we weren't out of the money and we hadn't sent anything yet. If it wasn't legit,
where do you go?
Where do you go with
a
big crate and a big dog,
yeah.
and you're paying every night for hotels and hoping that they take big dogs? And I'm sure everybody knows this already, or it's just a good cautionary tale that these things do exist, especially in paradise, and make sure that where you're going to, you're not being scammed. And I bet that you probably have examples of your own where you've been scammed, or you know somebody who was terribly scammed. So please leave that in the comments down below. We'd love to hear your experience. And as always, check back in and
track us down.
Looking for your own Madeira rental apartment? Check out this video of our first rental apartment here in Funchal, Madeira, Portugal. You might be pleasantly surprised.